Hello guys, back again for another video as promised. If you watched Worlds today or checked Reddit, you can probably guess that I'm going to do a video covering a bit of the G2 Esports versus Supermassive game in which Supermassive won. Plan was to kind of go over the Supermassive lane swap sequence from 14 to 18 minutes to cover how Supermassive took into account backs and lane priority and pressure to sort of make this happen. Unfortunately, I discovered yesterday when I did the overview of the jungle pathing is that even though Riot Games is okay with me doing videos like this, it's covered under fair use, whatever, YouTube uses video recognition to identify that there's a clip on YouTube already with the sequence and demonetize the video. Since I know this is kind of a small channel still and I'm not making tons of money, but I appreciate a little bit every now and then. I'd really rather my videos not be demonetized. So to get around that, I kind of have to come up with creative solutions. None of which are super viewer friendly. There's kind of one where I do something like this. I figure, you know, that's not as fun to watch, right? That's not kind of what you came here to do. You'd rather just watch the clips and maybe hear my voice, maybe figure that out. So I'm gonna try something else where I sort of break it up and then we talk a little bit about what we saw after. Maybe I can make it interesting, a little bit more in depth, and see how that goes. Technical babbling out of the way, let's get into the game. So until this point, basically G2 have sort of been pressuring the topside jungle and also pressuring the bottom lane, sort of trying to force ganks here and there, things like that, in a typically winning matchup for Supermassive. So in this scenario, we have G2 invading topside red again, and Supermassive decide to play defensively. Part of this is that Supermassive's bottom lane had push bot and they decide to walk mid. This isn't exactly the best solution ever, and it ends up kind of wasting their time. Well, when G2 are making this invade, they know that Zillion's past level 6, right? They know that Sion probably has his passive up. They know all of these sorts of aspects, and so they really don't want to be in a position where they're forcing something against champions that are difficult to kill, and they're wasting time when the enemy team has bot lane pushed, can theoretically join the fight on priority with the Tahm Kench ultimate. So they instantly back off as soon as you see Supermassive bottom lanes going into River, which to me is a win for Supermassive, right? Because they can still get their red buff, Supermassive can go back bot, and they continue pressuring that Tristana Alistar lane, and the G2 effectively wasted time. Instead, Supermassive send their dual lane all the way up and try to sort of force something really hard and just G2's bottom lane react by pressuring the enemy tower really hard and eventually getting it. When Supermassive are sort of in mid lane, they know that they've messed up. Their dual lane knows that they've messed up. So they can either go back down bot, or they can do what I would expect many teams in this scenario to do, which is just kind of really commit to going top, initiate the swap, send your Sion to TP, but you know at this point that you've lost your turret. So this isn't the best or most optimal play, and what Supermassive do is actually, I think, really smart. As you can see in this clip, because Supermassive didn't get anything off of their mid lane roam, off of their Tahm Kench ultimate, G2's bottom lane now have tempo. They have the ability to not only take this turret, but set up the wave so that when they then initiate the swap themselves, it bounces back. Wunder can catch it very easily. If Supermassive wants to stop this, they have to use Sion's teleport to make sure that they're in a position where they're not losing tempo. So instead what they do is that they send their bottom lane all the way back bot and they push the wave back so that they themselves now have priority to initiate the swap and get control of topside. So what happens next is obviously what I said, where Supermassive push out a full wave so that G2 have to push back in order to match, and they manage to get that wave ahead of them in backs and resets. And G2 obviously only push out one wave because they don't want it to push past River and slowly push the other tower, because they want Wunder to be able to catch it pretty easily, and so they just have it in reset. So it's dead center. So Supermassive are a back ahead. Their bottom lane is a back ahead of G2's bottom lane. So in this scenario, obviously Supermassive should have a little bit of a tempo advantage, but at the same time, we have mid lane and top lane, right? And also in this scenario, Perks backs and finishes his itemization. So mid lane is a full back advantage over the enemy mid, and this affects how Supermassive play out the next part of the game. So here you can see Perks coming back to lane. GBM is pushing out so that he can collect the blue buff and then reset off of that and get a lost chapter, so that in the coming confrontation he can match perks better. They have a little bit more CDR, a little bit more AP coming in for them. Of course, also at the same time, you have Supermassive's bottom lane, their duo lane, coming to the top lane. So here you should expect them to sort of walk up to the wave, begin pressuring the fact that they managed to back before G2's bottom lane by a little bit. But because they know that Perks can freely walk up river, Perks has pushed out the wave and everything else, they have to wait, they have to place defensive vision, and they have to be a bit careful here. So what I like about those actions from Supermassive there is that they are very careful. They're not overextending, they're not at a rush to pressure their advantage, because they know that it's not really a 5v5 right now, okay? It's more like a 4v5, because GBM is not able to join the fight like Perks can. They don't want to give Perks an opportunity to start snowballing, especially when Zilean isn't on the map and they can't protect their Varus as effectively or anything of that nature. So what they do is, you see Snowflower leading the charge, he's clearing out vision, he's getting defensive vision, so that G2 can't really see what they're doing over there. They can't overextend and look for a catch or a dive or set up anything like that. So I think that's just really smart play before they begin to pressuring their advantage, and knowing and understanding in particular that they don't really have tempo here, even if it seems like they should because of the way that they played out the bottom lane. Okay, so now Supermassive are all back on the map, they have good defensive vision in place, and they can start to think about moving forward a little bit. In particular, they're looking for the location of Wonder and Perks. So now that they've spotted Perks, of course, GBM can look to move back to the mid lane, start pushing again. You also see Wonder there, so you know that it's much safer top to press up a little bit, but at the same time, Supermassive are playing a bit defensive around G2's engage until you have the mid lane cleared for Supermassive, until they know that GBM can move first. And as soon as GBM starts to move, Supermassive press forward, they get a good chunk onto Tristana, and Tristana have to back. So this immediately opens up for them to go for Rift Herald and creates a desperation situation where Perks goes in on GBM and Sion ults to mid lane to throw him off. That's mostly the bulk of the swap that I wanted to talk about, right? Because you see how Supermassive sort of make a mistake in overcommitting to a play, but then they write the scenario to make sure that they're slowly getting back into a position where they aren't losing anything off of the fact that they sort of threw away a bit of their bot lane advantage, and slowly creep into a position where they can start pressuring the next turret, where they force the Tristana back and the next objective becomes their own. And then when Perks makes a desperation play, they use the fact that they have the Sion ult and the fact that Sion is just going to want to walk directly bot lane anyway to throw him off and make sure that they sort of stay in control of the map. So based on some of those mistakes and some stuff like that, I felt like Supermassive just were more mindful in that game in general about little incremental advantages they were getting left. They took steps, right? They made a mistake that could have cost them control of the game at a crucial juncture, and instead they carefully pushed, they waited for the backs to equalize, they waited to get an advantage on top side, they were aware of where G2 were moving on the map before they went for objectives, before they were starting to secure those. Whereas I felt like G2 were a little bit more sloppy in how they were communicating across the different lanes, and so this was definitely a deserved win. Almost every group is really excited in this play-in stage, which is a little bit unexpected. I'm really happy to see that every group is kind of top-heavy rather than bottom-heavy, except for EDG's group, and the rest of the play-in should be really fun, and I'm looking forward to talking more about what cool things play-in teams are doing.